Welcome to the City of Bakersfield Planning Commission meeting. This television broadcast is made available through cooperation with the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. The Planning Commission meets on the first and third Thursdays of each month. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. The planning meeting agenda is posted on the city's website at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over today's meeting, Chair Larry Coman.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to call to order the December 3rd, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Coman.
Here.
Commissioner Rudnick.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Bowers.
Here.
Commissioner Cater.
Here.
Commissioner Lomas.
Here.
Commissioner Wade.
Here.
Thank you. On March 4th, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency in California due to the threat of COVID-19. The governor also passed several executive orders related to social distancing, shelter-at-home practice, and more. These orders also included the suspension of some components of the Brown Act related to the public hearings like this one. Commissioners have the option to participate by phone. In this case, all the commissioners are present tonight, so nobody will be available by phone. Okay. At this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for attending tonight's Planning Commission meeting. This commission provides an opportunity for public participation in the development process throughout the city of Bakersfield. The Planning Commission considers a wide variety of projects, including subdivision maps, zone changes, general plan amendments, and more. When applications are received, the City Planning Division analyzes the request. Planning staff will present the facts about the project along with their recommendation to the Planning Commission, who will approve the item or make a recommendation as appropriate. Our goal is to carefully consider each project and make a decision that will balance individual rights with public welfare and the general well-being of the community. We will now receive public statements. This time is reserved for anyone wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the public hearings portion of the agenda. If you are here on items 5A through 5E or items 6A through 6C, this is not the time to speak. Does anyone in the audience wish to address the commission? If so, please come forward and state your name. Okay, we'll now move on to the consent calendar non-public hearing items. These agenda items typically involve housekeeping or administrative matters that do not require a public hearing. Does any commissioner wish to remove a consent calendar non-public hearing item for separate consideration? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on the consent calendar non-public hearing items?
I'll make that motion, Commissioner.
Mr. Wade?
I'll second it.
Who's that? Mr. Bowers? Thank you. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote. Are we doing this verbally or are we doing it on the computer?
On the computer.
Okay.
Commissioner Cater,
Yes.
can you please cast your vote?
Oh, my apologies, Sam. Sorry about that. Yes. It's no surprise how I voted.
Motion passes.
All right, and we're rolling now. Here we go. We will now move on to the consent calendar public hearing items. This agenda section includes public hearing items that are considered routine or non-controversial. These items have been reviewed by staff and are conditioned in accordance with the requirements of the municipal code. The planning director will read the items on the consent calendar to ensure that the public has an understanding of the items to be considered. If you would like to speak on an item, please come forward after the items are read and ask that the item be removed for discussion. If the item is not removed by a member of the public or a commissioner, the commission will vote on all items in one motion without further comment. Director Johnson, would you like to provide your report, please?
Thank you, Chair Coleman. Good evening, Commissioners, members of the public. Thank you for attending tonight. There are 5 items on the consent agenda. The first item is a 3-year extension of time for Track Map 6547, which allowed 71 single-family residential lots on approximately 33 acres located east of Kern Canyon Road and Chase Avenue. Item 5B is parcel map 12314 to subdivide approximately 79 acres of industrial land. Staff's recommendation for this item is to continue for 2 weeks to the meeting of December 17th, 2020. The next item is a zone change from planned commercial development to commercial center on 1.38 acres to facilitate mixed-use development located at the northeast corner of Baker Street and Kentucky Street. Item 5D is a general plan amendment from residential designations to a service industrial designation and a change in zone classification from residential to light manufacturing on 2.64 acres. It should be noted that 1.45 acres are within the city jurisdiction and 1.19 acres are being pre-zoned and currently undergoing annexation into the city limits. This site is located at the northwest corner of South Union Avenue and Astor Avenue. And the last item is a proposal for single-family residential development on approximately 66 acres in the one-family dwelling planned unit development zone. The project consists of 2 tract maps in the Old River Ranch development and is required to obtain approval of a PUD plan to verify consistency with the master's builder's site design and architectural implementation plan, which it does. This concludes reading of the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. At this time, I will open all of the consent calendar public hearing items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on a consent calendar public hearing item? This is not the time to take testimony. Just come up and say you want to have an item pulled for consideration. Okay, does any commissioner wish to remove a consent calendar public hearing item? All right. At this time, the public hearings on all consent calendar and public hearing items not removed are now closed, which, with the exception of item 5B, which will remain open until Planning Commission meeting on December 17th, 2020. May I get a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on the consent calendar public hearing items not removed, incorporating all staff memoranda and revised staff recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Bowers?
I'll second.
Commissioner Cater? Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
We do it.
We're not doing roll call, we're doing it on the computer. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, it is now time to hear the public hearing items 6A, 6B, and 6C. Before we begin, I want to explain how each hearing will be conducted. Staff will first give a report, then those in favor of the project will be allowed to speak. Those in opposition of the project will be able to speak after all those in favor have spoken. Each item will be given 5 minutes to provide, each side will be given 5 minutes to provide rebuttal comments. Individual speakers may ask questions during their statements, but the questions will not be answered until the public hearing on that item is closed. Written comments may be given to the clerk, who will provide copies to the commission. Please be respectful of other participating in the hearing by not repeating the remarks of previous speakers and presenting any new comments or thoughts in a concise and clear way. Mr. Johnson, would you please provide us with your staff report, the first item?
Thank you. Item 6A is a request for a new plan development review to allow development of an auto service station and multi-tenant building. Staff received several telephone inquiries regarding this project, so it is appropriate to provide a public presentation. The 1-acre project site is located at the southwest corner of Taft Highway and Mountain Ridge Drive. The property is zoned C1 PCD, or Neighborhood Commercial Plan Commercial Development. The applicant is proposing to develop the site with an auto service station with 6 fuel pumps and a 4,700 square foot multi-tenant building that includes approximately 3,400 square feet of convenience store and a 1,300 square foot restaurant. Parking requirements, taking into account credit for the fuel pumps, only require 12 spaces. However, to better serve the neighborhood, the applicant is providing 24 spaces. Regarding landscaping, the project is subject to special Caltrans landscape standards for development along this portion of Taft Highway. As such, a 30-foot landscape strip is provided along the northern project frontage, double what is typically required. The project is also required to comply with the design standards for retail developments that encourage developers to incorporate desirable community architecture to enhance the city's character and quality of life. The applicant has demonstrated compliance with these applicable requirements, including incorporating wall plane projections, color, texture, and material changes, roof line variation, and defined customer entrances. This project was publicly advertised, and aside from the telephone inquiries, no comments have been submitted. Based on the foregoing, staff concludes the request sufficiently demonstrates compliance with the necessary findings and therefore recommends the Planning Commission approve the plan development review as depicted in the project description and subject to the listed mitigation and conditions of approval. This completes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The public hearing on this item is open. By show of hands, how many are in favor of this project? Here to speak in favor of this project, thank you. And how many are here to speak in opposition to the project? Okay. Okay. This time we'll take speakers in favor of the project. If you're in favor of the project, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Coman, distinguished members of the Planning Commission, and Director Johnson. My name is Brandon Martin, and it's my honor to represent Triple SB Inc., the developer and applicant for this project. I believe this is going to be a good project to welcome people to the city's already existing investment in the soccer park. There's a lot of commercial development coming down the line, but this is going to be one of the first for serving the area, and we're going to see all 4 sides landscaped, gas station, and a place to eat during a break between soccer matches. In the past, I've actually asked Donna Nelson from AYSO to come down and talk about how we need this kind of infrastructure to serve the soccer park so that we can finally get the AYSO national tournament to come here to Bakersfield where it belongs. And I think this is a couple of additional checks on that checklist for amenities to serve the eventual national tournament that is a goal. We don't expect, it's my understanding there's no written opposition to this project. So we're going to be merciful to your commission and keep the comments brief tonight. I'm not going to wax lawyer on you, but I would like to introduce our architect, Alex Cuevas. As well, if you have any additional questions or concerns or anything is something that you need to express and have a response from us, we also have Gurinder Basra, who is representing the ownership of the development. Alex, would you like to come and give a presentation on your site plan?
Hopefully you can hear me well with this mask. Good evening, Alex Cuevas, representing AGC Design Concept. We are the architectural firm and also engineering on this project.
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name for me?
Cuevas, that's C-U-E, V as in Victor, A-S, Alex.
Thank you.
And company AGC Design Concept. Well, you can see by the renderings that we created, this is a very beautiful gas station, not your typical corporate box building. We worked very hard with planning, with the staff, in order to create this type of architecture that it was going to be, what can I say, beautiful. I did it, so that's why I think it's so nice. But in any event, looking at the area, we do a lot of shopping center, gas stations. There's one that is another gas station is very far from us. This also will create more competition. The brand is not yet established. We don't know yet what's the brand. But inside of the store, you don't get to see the floor plan. We're already working on the floor plan of the store. It is an open space, like in a mall type of thing. You'll have a Subway, a chicken place, a Mexican place on one side. You'll have the convenience store on the other with all the convenience of the typical gas station and plus. I don't know if you have any question regarding the architecture of the building or the design. Parking is always an issue, and as you know, on this one, we're over park. The landscaping, we had to give you guys 30 foot of landscaping on top. We lost a lot of property, which made the building smaller than what we have designed at the beginning. I guess just any questions that you might have.
We'll get to the questions in a little bit. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak in favor of the project? Mr. Cuevas, if you just stay around, the commissioners may have questions. Okay.
Good?
Yeah, just
All right.
have a seat there for a minute.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay. Are there any other people who'd like to speak in favor of the project? All right. At this time, is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please come to the microphone and state your name.
Hello, I'm Melissa Woods. So I live in the new housing community that is behind this proposed gas station. My house is less than one house away from where this gas station is going to be. I have concerns about it being a 24/7 noise, lights all the time, because usually gas stations, the roof of where the gas is higher than the roof of the house is going to be. So I'm concerned that my backyard, I'm going to see the lights of this gas station all the time. I'm also concerned about fumes from the gas station, which are carcinogens, being this close to where I live. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Does any commissioner have, are there any other people who'd like to speak in opposition to the project? Okay. Does any commissioner have any questions for the public on this item? Remember, this is not the time to express any opinions on the matter, only a time to ask questions. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Mr. Cater.
I guess it's a combination for staff and for the applicant. Can you explain any light mitigation measures that exist with residential adjacencies to gas stations? Just for the audience's, I guess, Mr. Johnson.
Any commercial, industrial properties, regardless if they're adjacent to residential or not, when they submit plans to the building department, they submit a lighting plan, so that way it can be looked at. They look at the lumens that are shown on the site and how far those spread off-site, and there's certain criteria that we try to, what's called light trespass. We prevent that light trespass from encroaching on the surrounding property.
And then to the applicant, there's noted landscape on both the south and the west property. Can you describe what sort of landscape is being envisioned as far as any provision for screening or filtering?
On the landscaping, I don't have the detail in front of me of the type of landscaping that we're proposing. There is, on the exhibits that you have in front of you, there is a description of all the materials. But far as the lighting, we come across this all the time. Our canopy is about 20 feet high. I'm sorry, 16 foot 4, the height. But all the lighting that is under the canopy is recessed lighting, like Mr. Johnson was saying. We have to comply with all the lighting measures. All of the lights that there are at the site, for example, pole lights, they cannot, the lighting cannot be seen from behind the lighting. It's all down lighting, and they have shields around it. So we have to have complied, especially in California, with many, many things relating to the lighting.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions? Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to provide a rebuttal on this item? If so, please be prepared to step to the podium. Each side will be given only 5 minutes to make your comments. So make your comments succinctly without repeating the remarks of previous speakers to ensure everyone wishing to provide rebuttal comments has a chance to do so.
I'll be brief, Chair Komen. So the question.
Just go ahead and restate your name for the record, please.
Brandon Martin.
Thank you.
So the question of whether this property should be a gas station adjacent to residential has already been answered by the City Council. We come before you with C1 zoning for a PSD, just looking to answer the question of how best can we apply that commercial zoning in terms of a site plan. And we'll continue to work. This is actually the first we've heard from this project opponent. We'll step outside after the meeting and talk with her and see how we can meet her needs. Architect has already addressed directional lighting in the city standards in that regard. There's also standards in terms of the release of gases, benzene and other carcinogens that she was talking about that apply to all gas stations. We will, of course, commit to follow all those laws that are for the benefit of the community surrounding us. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers in favor of the project who would like to speak as a rebuttal? Please come to the podium and state your name and proceed.
Yeah, my name is Gurinder Singh Basra. I just wanted
I'm sorry, you're going to have to help us spell that, please.
It's Gurinder, and my middle name is Singh, Singh, last name Basra, Basra.
Thank you very much.
All I wanted to say, this is not going to be a 24 hours gas station. It'll open early morning and but close at 11 p.m. So I just want to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Are there any rebuttal speakers in favor? Okay. We'll move on to rebuttal in opposition. Ms. Woods, do you have something else you'd like to add? Are there any other speakers opposed? All right. I will now close the public hearing on this item and return it to commissioners for comment and action. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Do anybody have any motions? Can we move to motion at this point? Yeah, we can move to motion, yes? Okay. Okay.
I wanted to direct this to Ms. Woods so that you don't think that we didn't hear you. We did hear you. In determining its use tonight is that was done in 2008. So they have zoning to do what they're doing. What this is about tonight is to show us what it's going to look like. And they've made the invitation for you to take a look and voice your concerns, and I'm sure they'll work with you. So know that we did hear you, okay? But we don't have that kind of authority to make the kind of changes to change what they're asking for. Thank you.
Is there anybody like to make a motion of any kind? Commissioner Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve public hearing item A.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Rudnick. Madam Clerk, can we have a vote, please?
Motion passes.
Thank you. Director Johnson, do you have a staff recommendation on item 6B?
I do, but if you give me a moment, I'd like to read the appeal period for
That'd
the
be
last
great.
item.
Okay, sure.
So decisions of the commission are subject to appeal by any person that believes they are adversely affected. The appeal must be filed in writing within 10 days from the date of the commission's decision. The appeal must be addressed to the city council and include the appellant's interest in or relationship to the project. Identify the decision appealed and address facts and reasons why the commission's decision should not be upheld. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Six B.
Yeah, you may proceed with 6B, please.
Item 6B is a request for a general plan amendment and zone change. The vacant project site is located south of Panama Lane between Weibel Road and State Route 99, north of Arvin Edison Canal. Surrounding properties include undeveloped and developing commercial to the north, a cemetery to the east. To the south is an elementary school, single-family residential, and a church, and to the west is self-storage and undeveloped multifamily property. The request is for a general plan amendment to change the land use designation from LR, or low density residential, to LMR, low medium density, from LR and LMR, low medium density residential, to HMR, which is high medium density residential on 23.5 acres. This will be discussed in more detail during the presentation. The request also includes a change in zone classification from R1, one family dwelling, to R2, limited multi-family dwelling on 15.9 acres. Should be noted the western 7.52 acres of this project site is already zoned R2. It's also important to note that no formal application for the physical development of this site has been made. So a question could be, what does the property owner gain from the general plan amendment and zone change? It is the general plan designation that establishes the density on residential development. For clarity, density is how many dwelling units can be developed per net acre. The LR designation, or low density, allows for development less than or equal to 7.26 dwelling units a net acre. For example, the eastern portion of this site could potentially be developed with up to 116 dwelling units. The zoning of R1 would limit this to single-family homes. In comparison, the LMR designation, or low-medium density, allows for a density greater than 4 and less than or equal to 10 dwelling units a net acre. The example here is the western portion of the site could be developed with up to 75 dwelling units. Although apartments can be constructed, the R2 zoning is more aligned with duplexes and triplexes. That said, up to 191 dwelling units could be constructed as an allowed use on this site currently. As proposed, the HMR designation, or high-medium density, allows for a density greater than 7.26 and less than or equal to 17.42 dwelling units a net acre. This could allow for a range of 170 to 409 dwelling units on this site, depending on how the site is designed. Again, with no formal application for development, a discussion on how many units or the type of construction is purely speculative. Nonetheless, the likelihood of developing at the higher number could be a challenge because the site still needs to provide interior roadways, amenities, open space requirements, etc. This project was advertised with posting of a sign on site, mailing of the public hearing notice, and publication in the local newspaper. In response, staff received a total of 21 comments in opposition and a petition signed by 22 individuals in opposition. Those responses are attached to the original staff report and the director's memorandum dated December 3rd, 2020 that was provided to your commission. Following this presentation, public input, and deliberations, your commission could make a motion on one of the following options. Your commission could recommend approval of the applicant's request for a general plan amendment from LR and LMR to HMR and a change in zone classification from R1 to R2. Staff would take this recommendation forward to City Council. Your commission could make a recommendation for a more restrictive zone district that would still allow multiple family development but provide for public input and review of all future development. The two more restrictive zones are the R2 with the PUD overlay, which requires a specific detailed plan that ensures the uniqueness of the project design and to make sure it is preserved. Prior to obtaining any permits, the applicant would have to come back to your commission for approval of the project design, and any subsequent revisions to that design would also require your commission's approval. Or the exclusive PUD zone could be applied. Again, this also requires a specific detailed plan for development. However, prior to obtaining any permits, the applicant would have to come back to your commission and to City Council for approval of the project design and any subsequent revisions to its design. Your commission could deny the project for specific reasons determined and made known by your commission. This action is final and conclusive unless an appeal is filed. Your commission could continue the hearing to a date certain if there are unanswered questions or additional information that is needed in order to make an informed decision. The only feasible date for continuance is December 17th, 2020 to maintain the state mandated schedule for when a general plan amendment can be considered. If your commission has substantial concerns that require an undetermined amount of time to resolve, it may warrant the project be referred back to staff for re-advertisement and reconsideration at the next general plan amendment cycle. This puts an approximate 3-month delay on the applicant. Based on available information, the project has been found to be consistent with the surrounding development, goals, and policies of the general plan and city ordinance requirements. However, given that the ultimate design of the site is currently unknown, staff is recommending the Planning Commission consider the more restrictive PUD overlay or exclusive PUD zone as part of the zone change. This would enable review by the public and for your commission to weigh in on the design when the details of the project are developed. This completes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The public hearing on this item is now open. By the show of hands, how many are here to speak in favor of the project? Okay. How many are here to speak in opposition to the project? Okay. Everybody will have a chance to speak. We'll start with those in favor. Anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening, Chair Coleman, Commissioners, staff. My name is Patricia Newquist. I'm with McIntosh and Associates, representing MEH Properties on this application for this 23-acre property. When MEH Properties approached us with the idea of multifamily for this site, we carefully considered this area's characteristics. When planning entitlements, one should consider the compatibility to surrounding areas and uses. In this case, this site is ideally situated. The site is bounded on the west by multifamily. If you look at the aerial, the little jog on the northerly line, all that property south of that, I think it's about 7 to 8 acres, is already zoned R2. The remainder is zoned R1, which we're changing to R2. On the north, it's bounded by commercial, on the east by Green Lawn Cemetery, and on the south by the Arvin Edison Canal. The project site is an infill, multi-family project that we feel is cohesive and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed multi-family use and the existing Arvin Edison Canal provide a buffer between the single-family residential to the south and the commercial areas along Panama Lane and Weibel Road to the north. The additional buffer to the single-family residential to the south created by the Arvin Edison Canal on the south side is 135 feet wide. When added to the 60-foot right-of-way and additional building setbacks, and this provides over 200 feet of separation between the proposed multifamily use and the backyard property line of the residential homes to the south. There are 6 single-family homes, a temple, and an elementary school south of the canal. The Kern Island Canal, which is 50 feet, separates the multifamily site from the cemetery to the east. Is the overhead working, Paul? What I want to show you is an aerial with an overlay. Which is adjacent to the property to the north. That site is currently being developed and includes several fast food restaurants, a gas station, a couple hotels, and a retail multi-use site for commercial. What we'd like to do eventually is create a pedestrian pathway to that commercial center to the north to create a walkable community. The development of multifamily adjacent to commercial to the north is ideal, as we all strive to plan for walkable communities to reduce vehicle trips and reduce emissions. The site is surrounded by commercial on the north and west, including a grocery store, a gym, 2 pharmacies, restaurants, convenience stores, and more. In reviewing the staff report, we note the professional planning staff agrees this is a good fit. Note that Panama Lane is a major transportation corridor with commercial and highly intensified use adjacent to the site. With its multifamily, it fits right into the corridor. On October 29th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m., we held a neighborhood outreach meeting. Mailing labels were secured from city staff and sent out to the property owners within a 300-foot radius. Information presented by Roger McIntosh at the meeting was emailed to those in attendance to be shared with the neighbors who could not attend and lived beyond the limits of the notification. A notice of public hearing sign was also posted on the site within the time limit guidelines. Based on comments received from those in attendance at the outreach meeting, traffic was the main concern. McIntosh and Associates prepared an analysis on the impact of multifamily versus single family and provided a letter to the city reflecting a slight increase in trips per day above existing land uses. The analysis resulted in an increase of 36 trip ends for AM peak and an increase in 24 trip ends for PM peak. This is in addition to the traffic generated at the proposed multifamily project. Based on recent traffic counts at the intersection of Panama Lane and Weibel Road, this is less than 1% of the traffic currently passing through the intersection and considered to be less than significant, which is supported by the city traffic engineer. Excuse me. In summary, the number of rental vacancies are at an all-time low in Bakersfield. Therefore, the demand for development of multifamily properties is great. The state encourages higher density development to reduce vehicle miles traveled and limit urban sprawl. The project site is located adjacent to existing walkable commercial development along Weibel Road and Panama Lane, including restaurants, grocery store, gym, and pharmacies. The project site is separated by the Arvin Edison Canal on the south side and adjacent single-family residential homes, temple, and school, and the Curran Island Canal on the east side with the adjacent Greenlawn Cemetery. We have reviewed the staff report and agree with the conditions of approval, and we appreciate your time and consideration and respectfully request your approval and support of staff's recommendation and the applicant in favor of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in favor of the project? Okay. This time, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the project, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Because we have a few people that like to talk, be prepared to come down after the next speaker so we can conserve time as best we can. And please try to avoid repeating the comments of other speakers. Please state your name and go ahead and proceed.
Yes, good evening. My name is Candy Gozman. That's Goessman. And I am a property owner as well as a property taxpayer that is close to that lot that is being proposed for R1 to R2 change. My concern is I did not receive the letter as far as what was stated that notifying us of these changes. I did get notification through neighbors that came to me because my property actually is adjacent to the project that's being proposed. My concerns are the safety as far as the traffic goes. We drive that road on a daily basis in and out on Weibel Road and Panama Lane, and it is congested. There's nothing there. I have seen this property being vacant for a long time. I am a property owner of 15 plus years in this area. So I know and I have seen the traffic increase there. What I'm concerned with is Weibel Road is going to be the primary entrance and exit for these R2 zoning, which is a problem with Weibel Road. Even though they have expanded it to a 2-lane, it becomes a problem through there trying to get out because people try to turn in. There is no turning signal, there's nothing there. So my concern is also the traffic through there. I've seen various accidents happen there. Like I said, I've lived there many, many years, and so I've seen it many times. So I'm concerned with that traffic and the construction that's being proposed. The other thing is too, the property that's being proposed is along the canal side. That canal actually goes along my property. And I have seen in the past people walking on the property. I have had people go over there, walking through there, that have jumped the fence to my property and have taken things or have taken from my fruit trees that I have. So I'm very concerned with as far as the access from the canal. It doesn't matter if they put a fence or anything like that, they still jump over or get through it. So I'm very concerned with that because that's access to my property, which is right next to the school. They're saying that there is a canal, that they would have something there as a barrier. It doesn't matter, they will still find a way to get past that and go. And not only my property, but the houses that are on the east side of my property also will have that concern as well. So those are two other concerns that I have, is also the traffic and the safety, and multi-properties, which are apartments, multi-story ones. These properties bring down value of residential homes. My home is on 4 acres. I am concerned with my property value being decreased because of these apartments being brought in, or proposed to be put in, and the sellable value of my property as well if I do decide to sell. So I'm very concerned with that, with the cost and the property value, not only of mine, but of my neighbors in this area. So those are my concerns for this project.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please come forward and state your name and begin.
Sorry. Good evening, Commission. My name is Luis Rodriguez, and I am a homeowner in the neighborhood to the south of the proposed project. And I'm also the one who started the petition, where I went around and talked to my neighbors and stuff about this project. Because we are all, when we came and bought our houses there, we were under the assumption that we would always stay, you know, single-family homes all over the place. For a long time, that lot had always been R1, and we had the assumption that one day it would also be developed that way. But now that they're planning to bring in multifamily development, we have so many concerns because, as stated, property value is going to go down, traffic's going to go up, and then for myself, who has a son who goes to the local elementary school, or kids who go to elementary school, the Greenfield district is overly impacted with students. Right now, I think in that Granite Point Elementary, the class sizes are almost 20 to 25 kids. By adding multifamily development, you're now adding multiple possible households with multiple kids, which would cause like class sizes to skyrocket in an already impacted district. So my concern is that, and also to go back, our neighbors live along the canal, and there's constantly issues, not with people walking up and down and trying to steal things and stuff. And to have people now living there and stuff, we're constantly going to be in fear that people are going to come and try to, you know, destroy our beautiful neighborhood and stuff. So, as our petition shows, you know, we feel that it's not safe, not only for ourselves, but also for the church that's right there. You're going to have constant flow of people, and people who go to the church go walking, you know, and for there to be more traffic and stuff, there's just more danger and more possibilities for accidents. So I feel that the zone change should not be done for multifamily, but should be kept as it is, single-family residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition? If so, please come to the microphone and state your name and begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Bernardo Madrid. I'm a resident of the subdivision directly south of the proposed change. It is, I'm not going to go ahead and be long with this, but I'm going to tell you that everything my neighbors have said are true, and it only takes one person to walk along that canal and see how many times that fence has been cut, and it's a pedestrian highway through there. It is incredible the amount of crime that comes through there. The traffic on Weibel Road is horrendous at peak times, 3 to 5 o'clock, 6 to 7. You can't get in or get out. I can imagine what it'll be like if these apartments are placed in that lot there. It was always known that it was going to be R1 or part of the cemetery, which now probably the cemetery is going to be their park if that apartment is allowed to be put there. So once again, I just want to say that I am very much opposed to apartments being built in that location. They should keep it R1 and just go with the flow of the properties in the area south of there, and the Sikh temple that is on Weibel Road. It all should be taken into consideration. I mean, people have pride in their homes, and with the constant traffic and individuals from the apartment, it's going to be a mess. One only has to look just east of 99 at the apartments there. Look at the crime stats. I mean, it's skyrocketed over there. But once again, thank you for listening to my consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition to the project? If so, please come forward and state your name and begin. Okay, does any commissioner have any questions for the public on this item? Remember, this is not the time to express any opinions on the matter. It is only time to ask questions. Commissioner Wade.
To staff there, just to address a comment that was made by one of the speakers, Ms. Gosman. She mentioned that she didn't receive a notice about this, and she identified about where her property line is. Is there any reason why we suspect that would have happened?
Yes, if you can see my cursor on the screen, her house is right here, and Ms. Gosman can correct me if I'm wrong. She has the 4-acre parcel just to the east of the school, and it is beyond the 300-foot notification radius.
Do the other commissioners have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody who wishes to provide a rebuttal on this item? If so, please be prepared to step to the podium. Each side will only have 5 minutes to make your comments, so make them succinctly without repeating the remarks of previous speakers to ensure that everyone wishing to provide rebuttal comments has a chance to do so.
Esteemed Committee Chair, my name is Jim Lamar. I'm the president of, it's LA, capital M-A-R, and I'm the president of Green Lawn Funeral Homes and Cemeteries. And I have worked for the company since 1990, so I've been in that area for quite some time. And I am aware of the vagrancy that seems to use those canals as transit areas. Not only if they cut in the backyards of homes, they also go into our property. But at this time, from what I've witnessed, there are no lights, there's no public to draw attention or point them out at night when they're wandering around and doing their misdeeds. So my suspicion, if nothing is built there, nothing will change with their pattern of cutting fences and going through. But if there's an apartment there with lights and dwelling and residents going back and forth, there's a greater likelihood these crimes will be called out. So I can't see that the project would increase vagrancy or increase crime. It could very well have the opposite effect. The other thing, having been there for so long, when those lots were vacant, we had people that would homestead and put up tents and would move into that area, as you see often around our town. Once the development started on Panama Lane, all of that disappeared. So I believe any vagrancy that may go on tied to that property would decline if it were developed. Also, we do about 95% of the services that, for the Sikh community because of our proximity to their temple. And they have shared that they would love to have an apartment on that side of Weibel adjacent to the temple because so many of their community walks to and from their apartments, crossing Weibel and going down Panama Lane. So they are actually interested that we would build a development next to them so they wouldn't have so far to go to attend their temple. Thank you very much.
Any other rebuttal speakers in favor of the project?
I won't go over the review of our.
You need to
or some
restate your name, please. I'm sorry.
Patricia Newquist.
Thank you.
I do want to add that MEH Properties will agree to the R2 PUD overlay, which is a combining district, to allow the commission to address the design issues such as the overlook, the setbacks, landscaping, open space, lighting and glare, recreation facilities, and other design concerns at the time of development. With a little time left on the clock, I want to point out that present at the neighborhood meeting were 3 members of the Greenfield Union School District. Every year, the school districts come out with a facilities needs analysis. This is a table I want to show you that's from the March 6, 2020. This clearly points out that the students generated from a single-family home is greater than the students generated from a multifamily home. We did an analysis comparing the two with the uses that exist. We came out with a total of 67 students generated with the combined multifamily and single-family, compared to a 37 students generated with multifamily. You can see that's a lower denominator when arriving at those numbers. The total was a difference of 30 less students generated. Greenfield Union School District did not have any comments during the neighborhood outreach meeting. I want to reiterate, and you all know this, but the state mandates school impact fees be paid with development. So we're looking at over $1 million in impact fees that would go to Greenfield Union School District for the facilitation of additional schools and equipment and whatever their needs are. All right? All right, again, it's an infill project, provides walkability to the
You're going to have to
adjacent
wrap up your
commercial.
comments pretty soon.
Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take comments in rebuttal on the opposition. Please come forward, restate your name, and begin. Remember, you have a total of 5 minutes for all comments.
Yes, my name's Ms. Gozman. To clarify, as far as the Greenfield Union School District, yes, that school is right next to me. I have served actually on that board for 4 years for Greenfield School District, and let me tell you, $1 million does not build a school and create more space for kids in this school. It's impacted right now, the school. As far as more students coming to this school, there is no way that a school can be built with $1 million in that area. Currently, there are kids being bused from other places to our school because of the capacity that our schools have right now as far as all the students in Greenfield. I've also been on the site council for that school as well. Yes, our classrooms are very large there, and with more kids coming, I don't know what that's going to do, and it's going to create the kids that are in this area to have to possibly be bused somewhere else. And that is not fair for kids who live in that area. So I'm concerned with that too, with the school as well. It costs a lot to build a school, and there is no space there for these kids, for more kids, especially in a multi-story complex. It's going to create more kids to be going to Greenfield School. And so I don't think that this is what this school needs. There's no other school in the area for Greenfield. Everything is east of the bridge, so kids will have to be bused. And I don't think that is what parents are going to want as far as this complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other rebuttal comments in opposition? There are 3 minutes left. All right. We'll go at this time. I will now close the public hearing item on this item and return it to the commission for comments and action. Commissioner Wade.
Thank you, Chair Coleman. I've been struggling with this all week. Bakersfield needs more multifamily housing. And too often, we're here hearing people tell us why multifamily can't go in their backyard. But it needs to go somewhere. And it's important for good planning and for a good community to have multifamily. I take issue with the comment that it would destroy your beautiful neighborhood. These things, when they're done properly, don't do that. The roads being insufficient, it's this sort of development that funds the infrastructure to facilitate better roads and such. Mr. Lamar's been there forever next to this property, and I imagine that there's a problem with vagrants there. Of course, that problem gets dealt with no matter what goes here, whether it's rezoned or not. So we need more high-density housing in Bakersfield. Here's my concern, and here's why I'm in opposition to this project. We have to be careful not to cluster our multifamily housing. I think it's easy for developers to try to meet the needs of a growing population and a population immigrating to Bakersfield from other more expensive places in California. It's easy for developers to find the path to least resistance to put in large multifamily developments. We need to make sure that we don't allow that to happen just based on what the path of least resistance is, where they all go to South Bakersfield. Because otherwise, South Bakersfield, I think just like I was saying, good development includes mixing in high-density housing. If you have too much high-density housing in a part of town, that's egregiously bad development, depending on the community. But for a community like Bakersfield, that's bad. We don't need to focus, we don't need to concentrate high-density housing in South Bakersfield. That's a problem. I know that the residents of South Bakersfield are starting to have a problem with that, particularly in this ward. So I'm an advocate for high-density housing. I am the first to speak out against the NIMBYs that don't want it to ruin their neighborhood, because that's not generally what happens. However, I don't think this part of South Bakersfield needs another large apartment complex.
Just go ahead and speak if you like. Nobody, oh, you're up, Ms. Lomas.
Okay. I can't breathe. Oh, goodness. Stay 6 feet away. Is it still 6 feet? Oh.
Not from your microphone, though.
Oh, my goodness. All right. There are some... All right, let's just go all the way back. what I look at, and I say it all the time, I'm sorry if I bore you, we have to demonstrate need and benefit. Commissioner Wade says we need. You're right, we need. Where's the benefit? Now we gotta go with the benefit. All right, so on one hand, you're right, there's commercial on one side and a canal on the other side, but I've driven out to this thing. I went out to it twice today because I went home and then I went back and I'm like, that's a lot of land. And I asked staff, I said, give me some sort of sense as to what that looks like. If that was all built out, what would that look like? And I couldn't use your example because nobody knows what that is. But to me, that's Bell Terrace. That is Q Street. That is huge. And I'm stuck on that. I can't get past that. I don't know how you mitigate that. I just don't. You've got to move that many people in and out. And that's daunting. You're landlocked. You've got Greenlawn next door, and I was out there at one time just for a couple minutes, and I counted 5 cars. So Greenlawn's using that road. But on their kind of site plan that they provided the neighbors, they didn't provide it to us, but I saw it because they provided it to the neighbors, shows that that's going to be cul-de-sac. So then, all right, well, if that happens, then now all that traffic that apparently Greenlawn visitors are using is now going to spill where? Right out, and their access is terrible. It's right next to an on-off ramp. What a mess. So you close up one thing, now you create a problem on the other side. So this is just not well thought out. I'm sorry, I mean, why bring us something of this magnitude that just says, hey, just give us what we want? No. No. If the owner of this property wants to do something in an infill where they have neighbors, if you're out all by yourself, then a neighbor can choose to move next to this. But this is going into a neighborhood. So bring the neighborhood a plan. This is no plan. This is a lot of problems that I can see, and I like to try to fix it and say, well, if we do this and we do this and condition that, and there's just too much to do here. And just the neighborhood knows, because I heard, I think Mr. Madrid said this, that it's all R1. No, it's not. That if you can see that western portion, that chunk, that's been zoned for apartments since 1990. So they can already put, thank you, they can already put apartments there by right. And that's plenty of apartments for that neighborhood. So I think they've got the correct zoning. I don't see the benefit to the area. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any comments? I'd like to make one comment before you guys. Mr. Gay, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'll just comment. Oh, sorry. I'll comment extremely loudly. I apologize. Yeah. I think one thing that was kind of my holdup on this parcel is, and I should have asked this during, I had a question that came up for staff. Is this, so the combined acreage of this site being, 20 plus acres seems, to the other commissioners' points, exceedingly large for the typical land allotted for multifamily housing. Does the staff know that, the average acreage that's usually allotted for high-density housing?
I did not come prepared to answer that question. We can research, but obviously the more higher density you have, typically it's not on the larger lots.
Yeah, I was just I was almost gonna get up and go look at the general plan map, but didn't want to be rude to speakers. Yeah, so for me, I just think sites like this, these sort of limited frontage, large parcels, I think just as a city, we need to be more thoughtful. I think the applicant mentioned a lovely connection to this adjacent C2 Panama zone, which I love the idea about. I like the idea of apartments interacting with commercial, but we saw the site plan development for that development 3 months ago, and there was a continuous CMU block wall. So I think these parcels, I am a big advocate for density and for urban housing and for apartment housing. But I think, those things need to start being, to Commissioner Lomas's point, thoughtfully presented, because they are quite a large impact on the neighborhood. And I do think, as it stands now with its limited access and sort of limited or lack of engagement with the properties to the north, I would agree that I think having the apartments limited to Weibel, as was planned in the 90s, with lower density behind, seems appropriate.
Any other commissioner comments? Any motions? You can go ahead and make a motion if you like.
I'll make a motion to deny this project. And staff, you figure it all out, because we got a GPA and a zone change, so
And I'll second that.
thank you.
So that's Commissioner Lomas making the motion, Commissioner Wade a second. Madam Clerk, can we have a vote, please? So what are we doing? We're doing 4 is against, or against is 4? 4 is, the motion was,
Clear?
yeah, can we start over?
Thank
again,
you for
please?
the clarification.
Can we start over and have more instructions, please?
That's a motion to deny.
It said motion to deny, so 4 is denies it, right?
Yeah,
And against approves it, okay.
so, yeah,
Okay, so are we ready to go?
yep. I think so. Okay, so we have,
Are you ready to go?
Can we clear the vote so we can revote?
You cancel
clarify
that
the
and
language.
start over again?
can't,
You can't?
the system won't allow it.
Uh-oh. Can we just do a verbal, can we have a roll call vote,
Yep.
please? Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rudnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers,
Yes.
Commissioner Cater,
Yes.
Commissioner Lomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
If I may read the appeal.
Yes, please.
Decisions of the commission are subject to appeal by any person that believes they are adversely affected. The appeal must be filed in writing within 10 days from the date of the commission's decision. The appeal must be addressed to the city council and include the appellant's interest in relationship to the project, identify the decision appealed, and address facts and reasons why the commission's decision should not be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think we're moving on to item 6C. Mr. Johnson, do you have a staff report?
I do. This is a continuance from the last meeting. It is a referral from City Council to amend the Bakersfield Municipal Code related to parking space requirements within the Central District, Old Town Kern, and other mixed-use areas. So to provide a little bit of background on this, downtown parking was added to the zoning ordinance in 1990. In 2008, 2013, and 2019, that section of the ordinance was amended. And then again earlier this year, Councilmember Gonzalez made a referral to consider 50% reduction for residential uses in the Central District. Central District and downtown are kind of synonymous. It is identified by the green, the Central District. So you have Golden State to the north, V Street to the east, California Avenue to the south, F Street to the west. And then oftentimes people are wondering where Old Town Kern is. And again, Highway 78 to the north, Beale Avenue to the east, Truxton to the south, and O Street to the west. So the purpose of having parking standards is to ensure off-street parking demands associated with new development will be met without adversely affecting other nearby land uses in surrounding neighborhoods. Another stated purpose is to allow flexibility in addressing vehicle parking, loading, and access, and to encourage mixed use and pedestrian-friendly settings throughout the city. And another final stated use is to encourage infill and investment into the Central District. There's several ways in the zoning ordinance that this encouragement is done. Developers can contract with public parking facilities if within 1,000 feet. Residential parking may be within 500 feet of walking distance, does not necessarily have to be on site. Parking for other uses, commercial uses, may be within 1,000 feet walking distance. Restaurants with less than 3,000 square feet, the planning director has the option to waive all or a portion of the parking. Nightclubs with less than 3,000 square feet and that are open after 3 p.m., again, the planning director has the option to waive all or a portion of the parking. And mixed use where the design and development function as an integrated unit, up to 50% parking reduction is possible. There are other citywide incentives, and this also includes incentives in the central district. Dwellings that are designed for moderate, low, or very low income, as long as there's more than 5 units, they get an automatic 25% reduction. Dwellings that are designed for those that are 55 and older, it's 1 space per unit. Dwellings designed for 62 years and older are 1 space per 2 units. And maybe I should back up a little bit to kind of clarify the parking standard requirement right now. For studio and 1-bedroom units, it's 1 parking space per unit. For dwelling units with 2 or more bedrooms, it's 2 parking spaces per unit. So obviously, if you're 62 years or over and that it's deeded that, you get 1 space per 2 units. And then a very common one that is used throughout the city is a zoning modification. And this is a discretionary process and allows for the reduction in parking requirements, and there's really no limit to that request. It could be requested at a 10%, it could be requested at a 50%, it could even go higher as long as you can make the findings for approval. Again, being a discretionary action, it requires a public hearing. It allows we notify the public within 300 feet, similar to what we do for other projects. So it allows the public to comment, and this is considered on a case-by-case basis. Zoning modifications with the recent changes in ordinances, either the planning director can consider that, or that can be pushed to your commission for consideration. So in September 2020, we went to the Planning and Development Committee for the referral. We presented information. They took public comments, deliberated, and they provided some direction for staff. Some of that direction was to research the 10 comparable cities and prepare an ordinance update based on tandem parking and reductions for density. In doing so, although this may be a little bit hard to read, Bakersfield is highlighted more in the white, but there are 2, looking at the 10 comparables, there are 2 comparable cities that have parking requirements that are more in the city of Bakersfield. There are 5 that have roughly the same parking requirements, and this is for downtown areas, as Bakersfield, and there are 3 that are less intensive, with Fresno being the one jurisdiction that does allow basically a 50% reduction. And again, be cautious on comparing just off this list. There are, different cities have different options that allow for reductions, whether that's surface parking lots, other additional parking garages, or other public transportation options. So when we were considering the ordinance that we are presenting to your commission, we looked at the city council goal, which was to utilize resources and partnerships to increase the population of downtown to 10,000 residents by the year 2030. We looked at the current inventory of underutilized buildings, such as this one at 18th and Chester. We did have some interest in converting the top floors to residential. We also looked again at the potential lack of public transportation downtown. As we go through the general plan update, that's one thing we're obviously going to need to consider is more multimodal transportation options for the downtown and not just rely on one source. We also looked at the potential impact of insufficient parking for dwelling units. And this is just one example. There's obviously different examples, but if there was 50 one-bedroom apartments, and again, those require 1 space per unit, 50 tenants plus 5 guests would require 55 parking spaces, and we require 10% guest parking. 55 or a 50% reduction across the board would need only 28 spaces would be provided on site. So out of 50 tenants, 28 spaces, you have potentially 22 tenants or guests that would have no dedicated parking space. And part of staff's concern with that is the spillover to surrounding businesses, although it may not be as problematic during the weekdays if the downtown residents work outside the city, but potentially on weekends, if the residents are parked along the street, that could impact the ability for customers to park or in front of the businesses. And then again, we looked at the potential for vacancies. If somebody wanted to look to move downtown but wasn't provided a parking space, there's possibility that those spaces could stay vacant, again, based on the way Bakersfield is right now. And again, we'll hear it quite often in front of your commission. As a comprehensive general plan update, that'll be a good time, if not sooner, to be looking at additional parking garage in the downtown central district, more towards the eastern side, and have goals and policies that have practices that reduce the reliance on personal vehicle use. So the amendment summary of what we're proposing is that mixed uses, that up to 50% reduction is possible. The greater the balance of residential to commercial office space, the greater the reduction. Exclusive multifamily residential development, we are proposing that on-site guest parking is not required as it is now. We are proposing to allow tandem parking for 2+ bedrooms or more, because currently right now we do not allow tandem parking, but we would allow that. And then if you're going to develop at a density of 50 dwelling units an acre, we would only require 1 space per parking unit regardless of the number of bedrooms. And any change of use in an existing building within the central district is not subject to any additional parking, provided there's no expansion of that building. So again, our recommendation, and it's primarily with the consideration of there is a zoning modification process right now that can be taken. We conclude that the recommended ordinance amendments to Title 17 of the Muni Code related to parking space requirements within the Central District, Old Town Kern, and other mixed-use areas are appropriate and consistent with committee direction. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The public hearing on this item is now open. I would ask for a show of hands, but I don't know how many hands we're going to see here. Is there anybody in favor of this project like to come and speak? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and proceed. Seeing none, is anybody in opposition to the project? Seeing none. Does any commissioner have any questions for public or staff on this matter? Remember, this is not the time to express opinions, just ask questions.
Commissioner Coleman, may I make a suggestion that because there's no public involvement that we move to deliberation and questions at the same time?
Does that work?
Isn't that typically what's done when there's...
I'm looking to Mr. Rudnick. Okay.
Close the hearing, yeah.
All right, so we're
That's
going
the right language.
So we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing section of this and return it to the commission for comments, questions, and motions. Okay? Thank you. Now, Ms. Lomas, did you want to speak? I have you on my old thing. I might not have cleared it from the last time. All right. How about Commissioner Cater?
Hi. Thank you, staff. So my question really stems from the kind of the last sentence on this slide. Appropriate and consistent with committee direction. I'm looking at 2 different proposed modifications to the zoning ordinance or to the parking ordinance. One that was presented at the September 22nd committee development meeting, and one that was presented to commission staff or commission, and they have very different descriptions of what's being proposed to be amended. So I was just curious, staff's take on the evolution of what was being proposed and what was approved or encouraged to move forward by the Planning Development Committee versus what we're seeing tonight, and when those decisions were made to deviate from what was discussed with council.
Well, in the audience with me tonight is the Development Services Director, Christopher Boyle, who was working on the original one that went to committee, and he can comment on that if he so chooses. But what we did is we took the direction from the committee at the Planning and Development Committee. We researched the other jurisdictions, and we looked more in depth at the downtown and what we have, and we felt this is what the committee was going for.
So that was, staff research was done post the recommendation to council committee?
That is correct.
So then what they discussed was not kind of a research proposal, it was just what they had literally stated?
A lot of times at the committee, what it is, it's to get direction from committee on what to do. So we will propose a draft that may be looking at what may be the best option that we think of at that time, but then we're looking for the committee direction. So if you look at the committee report, one of the options is to give us direction on what to do on what they are actually seeking. So it's more of a, I don't want to say more of a talking point, but it's a good talking point is what we give the committee.
Okay. And just for commissioners' benefit, I mean, what's in the, so I don't know how many of you had the opportunity, because it was an exhibit, it wasn't part of our staff report, was essentially what was discussed was what's described as a residential development parking incentive. For exclusively residential projects, the following incentives shall apply. And then it was produced as a residence development, a density of 30 to 50 dwelling units an acre would receive a 25% reduction, with development densities of 45 and above, 50% reduction. So a sliding reduction of parking standards based on density was what was presented to the committee, which is kind of, and then at the committee, I had the opportunity to hear the audio. You know, the guest parking and the tandem parking were introduced as additional clerical cleanups of the code. And so what we're seeing tonight just kind of does away with any distinction between suburban multifamily parking in Central District, unless you're a two-bedroom apartment in a dwelling unit of 50 an acre or more. And that just is a big difference from what was discussed versus what we're looking at. So I'm just curious a little bit on that, the evolution of that.
Thank you, Director Johnson. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle, or Boyle, yeah.
If I might. The first planning and development meeting that we did attend, we presented a draft ordinance as part of that staff report. And within that ordinance, there really was an omission as it relates to trying to stay focused on no more than a one stall per unit reduction. And the reasons for that are just simple land use planning principles, which would want to make absolutely certain that each residential unit had the opportunity for a dedicated stall. It is something that a prospective tenant anticipates and expects as part of a unit. So it's difficult to not want to be supportive of that, because that's an expectation of the marketplace. We're not in San Francisco. We don't have any other alternative forms of transportation that are readily available and actively used. I would guess that most of us in attendance here tonight arrived via a personal vehicle and would expect.
Not all of us, yeah, but.
Duly noted, Commissioner. But even with that said, I would expect that the commissioner would expect, if he owned a personal vehicle, that it have a dedicated space to put it. So within land use principle, there really is an expectation that you provide no less than one stall for every residential unit, because it's an expectation of the marketplace. In this case, it was an omission to the original draft ordinance, but there was an expectation, and because it went to council as a staff report and a draft ordinance, there was an expectation that we would discuss that omission as part of the dialogue that was occurring during that meeting. But the dialogue during the meeting took the committee in a different direction as it related to what they felt they wanted to see. It was dominated by discussions as it relates to tandem parking stalls and other variables that we took that to heart and provided a revised ordinance that really spoke to the dialogue of that meeting. And that's what's before you today. That's really a summation of why there's two different ordinances. The second ordinance is a byproduct of the dialogue that came from the Planning and Development Committee meeting. I'd note too that oftentimes when staff takes in a referral, how it's expressed to staff is oftentimes very broad in its expectations. You might note that we recently shifted a tremendous amount of responsibility upon the Planning Commission and provided additional discretionary power as it relates to conditional use permits. And that referral came to us as really a request to take corrective steps with with conditional use permits, not a directive necessarily to dissolve the BZA, which is ultimately the path that staff provided as a recommendation to council and to your body. So we think that we speak to Councilmember Gonzalez's concerns. We think that we also speak to logical land use planning principles. And if you have any questions, I'll turn the microphone back over to Director Johnson, or if you have any questions of me, I can answer those right now.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate the evolution of the conversation. I think, for me, I think there's a couple of assumptions in there as far as what the market wants, what the market demands. I think those are things that, that are accepted norms and accepted practices. And I think, as we look at downtown in the Central District, we, in many ways, have acknowledged that how to build and how to design a good walkable urban core is going to look different than how we develop a suburban, single-family dominated, other uses integrated mode of development. I mean, I think we've seen examples of the zoning changing. Downtown is now kind of exclusively a CC and a CB zone. The idea that land in the downtown area is prescriptively described as a C2 or a C1 or an R4 or an R2 has gone away, as have many of the setbacks and clearance requirements to address the form-based. And so, I mean, besides the fact that I, just having listened to the committee meeting, having read the two reports, think that we are kind of far from what council was originally requesting. I just think that there's also a good dialogue to be had about, I mean, I'm a big advocate for downtown. I believe in downtown. I live in downtown. I work in downtown. I spend most of my time in downtown. And communities like ours that don't benefit from major tech booms that transform overnight, or industries that completely transform their communities to where you can build whatever high-rise with whatever parking structure you want. So communities like ours that are more of a slow growth and more of a steady improvement and steady investment, looking at standards that prohibit creative use of the limited land. We often look at our standards and think, well, we're not a landlocked community, but downtown is a landlocked community. Our grid is small. We have a block constitutes only 1.25 acres. Dense parking stackers, parking garages are cost prohibitive. And so I think for me, what I see behind the council's intent is an acknowledgement that we need to figure out how to transition from no housing to a vibrant housing community. And I think that takes the ability for developers to be creative, for opportunities to be presented. I mean, I think I have had the opportunity and the privilege to live in communities since my early days in Bakersfield, where an apartment was not, a car was not an assumption with an apartment. And I mean, yes, San Francisco, Commissioner Boyle was one of those, which we are not San Francisco, but San Luis Obispo was another one, and that's a town of 45,000. You could say, well, there's a younger population or there's other factors in play, but I think what it comes down to is, are we looking at what others are doing, and are we putting policies forward that encourage a thriving downtown? And I mean, I think for me, we always go back to this as an advisory body and not a legislative body. We are not elected officials. We are appointed And so for me, Commissioner Johnson, or not Commissioner Johnson, sorry. Welcome up, there's an extra seat, you can join, yeah. Mr. Johnson was, in a conversation we had earlier, was the understanding that when this one goes to council, they will see both staff reports and be able to choose how they'd like to proceed, and is that correct?
When we present this to council, again, similar to what is here, they will have as backup material the ordinance that we propose to committee. They will have the ordinance that we propose to your commission. And then if your commission decides to make additional changes, we will bring that forward also to the council.
So tonight, we're not really deciding the issue. I think we're deciding as a commission, as an advisory body, you know, what we would like to throw our support behind. And so with that, I'm interested in other commissioners' thoughts and comments. Again, I'm making my piece, but would love to hear other perspectives. And then if there is interest on the commission to advocate and propose for what was originally discussed at the committee meeting, there's a few clarifying language items I'd like to talk about. But I think generally I would love to open it up to the other commissioners for any thoughts.
And if I may, real quick, Commissioner Cater, if your commission decides not to make any changes, the comments you're making here will be incorporated into our admin report to council regardless.
Commissioner Wade.
I'd like to hear more from Commissioner Cater about how, or to help me understand how this is different than what you expected. You know, I was prepared to make comments that obviously, well, putting extra strain on the parking resources of downtown is a negative. However, we need more people living downtown, and there is a high pain tolerance to try to make that happen, I think. So I'm in support of this general direction. I'd love to see things like this. I am not privy to the conversation that you're referring to, so I don't know how doesn't meet what you were hoping for. I'd like to hear more so that I know. I'm in favor of doing something along these lines. Out of respect for downtown and Councilman Gonzalez, if we decide that maybe he wants more input before it officially goes to City Council, if that's what we think is going on here, that maybe this isn't what the committee originally wanted, maybe we can hit the pause button on this. But I guess I'd like more information. I'm in support of this and what I'm seeing right here. I don't know what the alternative is.
I think if I may speak, is that directed back to me? Yeah. Essentially, the two different proposals. One, the commissioner report really clarifies a few incidental uses that are required for housing development. Like guest parking is probably the most obvious, which is an added load of parking based on not just the people that live at the development, but anyone that might visit the development. And so that being taken away is kind of an acknowledgement that the downtown behaves in a different way, which because you can park on the street, you can park in the structure. So there's kind of, and then tandem parking clarification. So there's some clarifications. I think the real core of it gets to this idea of, are we reducing parking requirements so that developers can provide less than 1 bedroom, 1 unit, or 1 car, 1 unit is, I think, really the core of the issue. And I think cities that have, I mean, Fresno, of course, was highlighted as a very aggressive strategy. Sacramento has kind of a tiered parking strategy, and their 2 densest tiers have, similar reductions. Stockton, what wasn't shown on this matrix is also how the central district standards relate to their general standards. It's very typical for a city to have a suburban standard for parking and a central district standard for parking. It's just, I think, what Mr. Boyle brought up was that idea of, is it aggressive enough to say, 0.75 parking spaces per unit, to where you'd have an issue of, where you'd have the assumption of one parked car per residential unit is called into question, because in a downtown nature, there are public garages, there are other means of people to move through the downtown area. And I think it's a strategy that's been used by many municipalities. You know, Fresno, I think if anyone has spent much time in downtown Fresno, has a pretty robust housing program. I mean, a lot of it was through redevelopment agency days, so it's not quite as prolific as it once was. But it's interesting because the area of Fresno that became more residential and more of a community is not the core where existing parking garages occur, or the Fulton Mall, where it's pretty dense with infrastructure. It was kind of an industrial area that was very similar to our East of Chester neighborhood, where it was just a lot of underutilized industrial land and kind of infilled at 3-, 4-story, 2-story infill housing projects. And so for me, I mean, I think the real call, and I think Commissioner Wade, I sentiments is the need to be proactive and encouraging downtown development, and I think it's just the means of how to do that. And so I think the real discrepancy here is from the audio of the planning development meeting, from Councilman Gonzalez's original referral, was a stated goal to see a reduction in the parking load that was applied to projects, whereas this doesn't really reduce the load of parking. It kind of provides some, 10 to 20% reduction based on ancillary parking standards. So it does a little. I think that the council's stated desire was to do a little bit more, and that's kind of where we're at tonight. Commissioner Wade, did that confuse you more, or did that? Okay. It felt like a lot of rambling. So a lot of talking, not a lot of listening. So if someone else wants to speak, please go for it.
Director Johnson, did you want to weigh in on that, that discussion back and forth? Basically, Commissioner Cater is saying that this plan is not as aggressive as council asked for.
The audio was provided to Commissioner Cater, and we appreciate the effort that he's taking to do that. I would also note that one of the premier residential developers downtown did not request a 50% reduction. That company only requested 3 things: tandem parking, guest parking, reduction in guest parking, and looking at a parking garage. So even the premier developer was not requesting a 50% reduction. And again, there are points to be made. There's 7 people up here, same as City Council. Councilmember Gonzalez will also have an opportunity to convince, whatever is presented to council, he will also have the opportunity to convince the 7 council members of which way to go.
Chris Boyle, Development Services Director, if I might add to Director Johnson's comments by stepping back before I step forward. You are a discretionary body, and you provide a recommendation to the council, and the council is ultimately the discretionary body. And staff acts as professional staff to both you and to the council. In this particular instance, staff's analysis leads to a recommendation that isn't consistent with a straight 50% across the board ordinance for parking in the downtown district. But that doesn't mean that you as a discretionary body or the council can't, since you have the authority to do so, can't overlook that recommendation or take different considerations into mind and come to a consensus that an across the board 50% reduction is the right way to go in downtown. Staff's analysis would lead to the additional recommendations before you. I think your staff report also notes that there is a zoning modification process already in place, which allows for the Planning Commission to look at a case-by-case basis in providing additional reductions in parking, which is a tool that you already possess, which provides for that case-by-case creativity to be applied in the downtown area. So when we took a holistic analysis of the reductions that are in place, the tools that are before the council and the planning commission. Ultimately, our recommendation is before you, and but we're more than comfortable to take alternative direction from the planning commission and from the council in coming to a final determination on what's right. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Bell.
All right, I know you didn't ask for my comment. Oops, sorry, but I'll give you one anyway. So I strongly agree with anything that we can do with parking, especially in the area of residential. But let's see, I don't want to disrespect a view here. Let me see how I can do this. Yes, the problem of parking is a major issue. A bigger issue that drove Fresno and drove other communities, Commissioner Cater, is funding, is financial. So just making an amendment to this that gives staff the approval to perhaps reduce parking is a great step. But until we make steps to make this city, from a commission point of view, from a council point of view, that we are a fundable and an investable city, and we have made not just parking changes, but change of use, which we're trying to do. When you, as Mr. Boyle said, I don't know how long ago it was that we said we'd allow things such as existing blighted properties to be changed without a parking change. We got to get bolder on all of that, all of it. Whether it's committee at council, whether it's committee at this level, it's hard enough to fly the greatest project on the planet in front of a developer right now and get him to move, because funding is so tough and so different. And I don't expect it to get a lot better. So the incentive, this is fine. This is a great step. But I personally would love to see, and I'm sure other developers, I'm a commercial developer, it's a different story. But the more we allow change, the more we allow unique change, the more we push for an open door policy that really is discussing something someone else hasn't done. I'm not real crazy about hearing what Fresno did or someone else did. I'm crazy about figuring out what Bakersfield's going to do, because we are such a loving, inviting, benevolent community. And the other thing is, we're not as safe as we used to be. I'd like to pay attention to a whole bunch of that stuff too. You know, let's incentivize them into coming into downtown when it's a little safer. Give me a plan on that tonight. I'm only a commissioner, I can't do much, but I would love to hear about that. Oh, by the way, City, I applaud you, what you're doing with the, I call it the Evaluation Center, forgive me, out on East Brundage. Amazing job. I know they call it something else.
Navigation Center.
Thank you, Navigation. I'm not allowed to say that in public. Did it anyway. God bless you guys. I mean, great job, great start. It's, I mean, those are changes that are so positive. And yeah, I'm in favor of this. Let's do more.
Commissioner Cater, you seem like you had a rebuttal.
Oh, no, I would just add, Commissioner Bell, I could keep talking until the wee hours of the morning about all the things that we could do to encourage downtown development. But I think in the context of what we're looking at tonight, in the context of the very limited scope we're looking at tonight, I would just say that parking a small constricted site with limited funds to the type of parking infrastructure you can provide is prohibitive to the type of units that we can divide. So I think what I see downtown is a conflict between the desire to have dense urban housing to get 10,000 residents to downtown by 2030 with no acknowledgement of any creativity for, and then I think, you know, I think developers are people that have their hand on what the market can and cannot demand, and I think in my experience, it's probably, you know, I think the thing about providing, and I think similar, I think looking at our zoning for downtown, I think taking similar, as we look at these different aspects, zoning allowance, you know, and I think, I always think about the housing project. It was before my time on the commission, and I don't know if it came to commission, but, you know, there was a housing project on 18th and C Street that was, you know, 4 stories, infill housing, the type of project that we would promote as a city. It was 3 blocks west of the downtown zone, and therefore, to develop it, we were requiring a 40-foot setback without public review and a variance. That project got dragged through so many reviews, took a year and a half to approve. If it was 4 blocks east, it would have been a by right project without any setback issues. So the policies that we make to encourage people to invest in downtown make a difference. And I think, you know, looking at the success of what we've done with zoning, looking at the success of what we've done in other areas, I think what's inspiring and before council, what council brought to us is this opportunity to look at parking, not holistically. I completely agree. I think we saw phase 1 of parking study done downtown last year that, you know, determined that there is a ton of available parking. We're compacted in about 3 sections of downtown. Other than that, we're very underparked as a community for downtown in our current state, which is all we can look at because we can forecast what could or could not be. But what we're at currently, you know, underparked. There's mention of a phase 2 study, and I agree. I think general plan, phase 2 parking study. There are a lot of holistic policies. Mr. Boyle, one thing I appreciated about your comments at the planning development meeting was the need to keep a parking standard that is legible and understandable, and that it is not a subparagraphed footnote that leads to another footnote that leads back to another section, which is what happens when things happen into piecemeal conditions. So I'm a huge advocate that we still have a lot of work to do to holistically look at some of these bigger issues downtown, but I think what we're looking at tonight is a referral from council to consider a reduction in load as a way of meeting a stated goal of increasing the residential population of downtown. And so I would encourage, just stand here as an advocate for what was originally presented to the Planning Development Committee to be allowed to go through to council and to be supported by the commission.
Are there any other commissioner comments? If none, I'd like to make a comment of my own. I wholeheartedly agree that we need to encourage residential development in the downtown. And I support this particular motion. I'm concerned about being too aggressive in reducing the parking requirements until the city is willing to do more about fixing the parking problem. And, you know, we can't just say, well, you don't have to have parking on your site and not provide a place for the people to park. So, you know, a lot of communities do a lot better job of providing that off-premises parking. And I think we're way behind the curve on that. So I'd like to see, I'm good with this particular proposal. It leaves a lot of discretion to the planning director and the planning commission to review developments on a case-by-case basis. And I still think this is a very smooth process that we have in Bakersfield. I think we purposely try not to build in obstacles to development, but I don't think that's unreasonable to keep that discretion with the director and the commission. That's the end of my comments. Thank you. So does anybody like to make a motion on this particular item, 6A? I'm sorry, 6C? Okay, so we're not getting a motion. Do we want? Commissioner Bowers, did you want to make a motion over there? Oh, I thought I heard you talking over there. So sorry. Mr. Wade. Okay. Commissioner Cater.
So, Mr. Johnson, so the plan of attack, regardless of, is just basically are we throwing our support behind what you've presented to commission? Are we throwing our support behind what was originally presented to the Planning Development Committee? And are we making any language changes? Is that kind of the task before us?
That's correct. I mean, the motion's going to be go with staff's recommendation, or you could make a motion, you could draft some revisions and make a motion to present that in front of council.
Okay. So, I think I'll put a motion before commission, and if it gets shot down and we go back with the other way, we can talk about that. But my first motion would be that that before I make the motion, there's a few modifying language issues, I think, with how the code is written that I think would be worth clarifying. One being that these parking incentives refer to a number of different zones. They refer to Central District, to Old Town Kern, to the CB or the CC zone. And the CC zone gets a little scary because the CC zone can be applied to any part of the city. You know, there are CC zones that exist in the Bakersfield Commons project. There are CC zones that exist in the West Ming project. And so the language as it reads now, all of these parking incentives would not just apply to the downtown area, they would apply to any zone in our city that is classified as a CC zone, which there are many areas that are not in the downtown core. That's something that a developer could overlay on their property. And I think that doesn't seem like the intent of providing parking incentives in the urban core. Mr. Johnson, would you agree?
Yes, the CC zone is elsewhere outside the Central District.
And so I think the staff has thoughtfully addressed that in how on the change of use for an existing building, they clarify that any change of use of an existing building in the Central District shall not be subject to additional off-street parking. And that distinguishes in my mind that that is intended just for that area map and boundary that you showed previously and not for the whole city. So my proposal would be and this is, let me get the wording down. I would make a motion that we support the language, the amendment proposed at the September 22nd, 2020 Planning and Development meeting with the following revisions, which would be that document, item B, would be revised to state residential development parking incentives for exclusively residential projects within the Central District in Old Town Kern, or within the Central District. The following incentives shall apply to limit the scope and scale of what that applies. Of course, anytime. Well, not anytime, but right now, yes.
Yeah, the floor recognizes Patrick Wade.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to head off before we get too in the weeds here.
Yep.
I'm in support of this as presented.
Okay.
Now, maybe it can be better. And if that's the case, I'm willing to vote for something better too. I don't think we should be rewriting it here. Because I'd want to take some time to see what I have no idea what you're talking about right now as you're going through it. And those things might be things we need to incorporate. So I want to approve this as written or with some changes. But I wouldn't be able to vote for some changes that are written today on the dais.
Yeah, I mean, I think the language changes are clerical, so if the commission wants to forego, I would just make a simpler motion that we put our weight and our support behind the language that was proposed at the...
We've not seen that.
You have, it's been in the staff report.
That's not what's before us, so you're rewriting.
Is it, my understanding with Mr. Johnson was that we could look at either proposal. Is that not correct?
I believe on your iPads, the draft ordinance that we gave to committee is part of the backup item. If you want to look at that and propose that to council, that is an option, yes.
But then I do think that that is probably undue and unfair for commissioners because it was not presented as the actual report that they,
It was not.
yes. So we're not prepared for that, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so do you?
So do you recommend a continuing then so that we can be prepared for that?
If that's what your motion is, we can make a motion to continue this if you want to make that motion. Return it back to staff for more clarity? Is that what we're talking about, or?
Well, no. So essentially, in theory, there's two reports that offer two different perspectives. One that was presented to council at their committee, and one was presented to us. And between that, there was further investigation by staff, and they came to different conclusions. And so, yes.
Okay, well, let Ms. Lomas figure this out for us.
Okay. I think we're prepared to move forward with what's been presented to us. You've got some amendments that you want to. Can those, what your changes, what you would like to be included, because you said that could be presented to council, whatever recommendations, additional recommendations that we might have?
The ordinance,
Because we're prepared on what you've given us.
Yep.
We're not
The-
prepared with what.
the motion that you make is what we're going to present. What we will do is if Commissioner Cater has additional changes, we will add that to the admin report within the text of the admin report.
There you go.
It would not be, here's Commissioner Cater's ordinance, here's
No.
the commission's ordinance, here, blah, blah. We would take your motion, and that's what we would go forward with. But we would, again, summarize the comments. If Commissioner Cater has additional changes, we'd note that one of the commissioners recommended these changes.
Because it's essentially what you're proposing is not going to change staff recommendation. So you're not going to come back to us with something different.
Yeah, so I guess in thinking through the procedural aspect of it, I think I'd like to propose this approach because I think at the core of it, it seems like the conversation that happened with council was absent of what we're seeing tonight. The items that we're seeing tonight, to me, are acceptable, and I think that there's commission approves of the report. So I would just I think that we could move this conversation onto council as that was the initial instigator and the thought behind it. And then in the admin report, Commissioner Cater would just like it noted that the residential development parking incentives, which were the impetus of this whole process that appeared at the committee meeting, are no longer present in this document, and it should be acknowledged to council that it's not the same thing that they discussed at that meeting, because I think that, to me, is the core of the issue, is just that there's a big difference between what we're looking at and what was originally discussed, and to me, being an advisory body, that is something that is worth advising the ultimate decision makers, which is city council.
I think all of us agree that you're the resident expert on that, and we recognize your professionalism on that. So what is your motion? Is your motion to approve this as written, and you're going to provide additional comments to staff?
I believe I have his comments.
Yeah.
I have his comments.
Yeah, so essentially I would
Just
make
what he
them,
said here,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I understand Commissioner Cater, in part based on the previous discussions we've had. He's referring to the ordinance that we presented to committee, and I understand what he's saying.
Yeah, I apologize. It was buried in our report, and it actually was not in the original report. It popped up for this meeting and not the previous one. So it's a little confusing, but essentially what was discussed, I just want it to be noted that it's no longer present to what we're looking at, so that council members can be aware of that and make their own decision with all the information.
Your motion is to approve this as written, and adding your comments as addendum.
Yes, it would come as an admin report. Is that what you're stating?
I think the motion can just be move this ordinance forward, and I am acknowledging that we will include what Commissioner Cater requests into our admin report to City Council. I don't think that needs to be part of the motion.
Yeah, I mean, that
All
works.
right, so corporate guy over there, a legal guy, will figure out how to write that in the report.
Yeah,
and
well-
we'll vote for it, all right?
And I'll second it. Oh, there's more?
No, you guys didn't want me to clean up the language. It's applying the whole city. It's good. Yeah. I have no comment on that. Yeah.
All right,
They can deal with-
somebody tried to second that motion.
I will try and second that.
Okay, so that motion is by Commissioner Cater and second by Commissioner Bell.
Okay.
We have a vote, please. Let's go ahead and do it by roll call, and we'll get it done with that way.
Okay.
You're probably still stuck there on that from the last vote.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Rudnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers.
Yes.
Commissioner Cater.
Yes.
Commissioner Lomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Okay. You got to tell us that passed. That passed? All right.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on quickly to workshops? No workshops. Communications. Director Johnson?
We will have a meeting in 2 weeks, December 17th.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be available, if you could just let staff know ahead of time.
Okay. And you mentioned before the meeting that there was a comment you wanted to make about masks.
Yes, I'll brief you before the meeting, but starting tomorrow, masks should be required in open rooms such as this,
I thought it's always been required in open rooms.
even when speaking.
I see. Okay. All right. All right, thank you. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, we'll move to adjournment. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for coming.